Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Tuesday, December 17th. Getting a later start today than I'd planned on. I forgot we were getting Ohio State practice access. We'll have more on that on the channel. Tom and Tony already did a show about what we saw. I won't get too long-winded on that because they've already covered all that ground. 2 periods of practice. Don't really get to see a lot. I think it was college football playoff mandated that we had to go in and see a little bit. We don't see practice during the regular season or the postseason, maybe at the bowl. So since technically it's a bowl, I guess it makes sense. I guess it's canon that we got to see a little bit, but very, very little going on there. Did get to see Devin Brown out there practicing with the team. He, of course, is in the transfer portal, finishing out the season with the team. Every player's kind of have to come up to their own decision. And I think if Ohio State progresses, players will have to make more of a decision whether or not they're going to be there for this round or that round or whatever, as people will be looking for new schools and places to go. But if Ohio State doesn't win against Tennessee, it is a non-issue. So that is really what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Tennessee here a little bit. Let me just say quickly, if you like what we do here at the Big Me Kickoff, here at Buckeye Huddle, check us out. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. We are closing in on 24,000 subscribers. Can't imagine. We've not had this YouTube channel for years and years and years. It's over a year old. It's not 2 years old. So you have helped us with phenomenal growth. Please subscribe, hit the bell, hit the thumbs up. That all helps us. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, why don't you write us a 5-star review? That helps us with our distribution. I'll tell you later in the show how you can become a member of Buckeye Huddle at a discounted price. But before I lose people with sales pitches, we're 2 minutes in. Let's talk about what is here. I wrote a series over the last couple of days called Winning the Game, What Ohio State Must Do. I broke it into offense and defense. I will link the stories in the show notes. I don't want to sit there and essentially read what I wrote. The stories are free. Even if you're not a member of Buckeye Huddle, you can read the stories. They're not behind a paywall. I wanted to put it out there so people could read it and, get ready for the game. You like what you read from us, more likely to join. If we keep everything behind the paywall, you may not really know what you're missing out on. So I'm not going to read all 5. I took 5 on each side. 5 on offense, 5 on defense. I'll read you 3 of them, and I'm not even going to read it. I'll talk about it. I mean, reading online is boring as hell. You don't want that. Unless it's an audiobook. I don't think anybody's asking me to narrate an audiobook, but if you're looking for somebody to do it, I don't come cheaply. So, and if you want to read the rest, again, check us out. It'll be in the show notes. So, bear with me as I have multiple windows up, but there are 5 things that I think that are going to be important for Ohio State to win the game. And I'm not saying that they have to do all 5, but I'm not saying that they just do one that they're going to win the game. But these are the things that I think are important. And the first one is score more than 24 points. Now, the total, I think, on the game is 47. And for those who aren't gamblers, that means over-under. Will Ohio State and Tennessee combine to score more than 47 points? If it's 47 and it is 47, that's a push. You get your bets back. Minus the juice, if there's juice. Depending on how things are. It's very different going to the corner bookie and how he handles it versus how one of the apps is going to handle it. But here's kind of my thoughts. Over the last 3 seasons, Tennessee has lost 8 games. And what happened in 22 doesn't really matter in 24 and 23, the same thing. It does. But you do develop trends. The personnel changes, certainly the athletes are changing with the personnel. It's not always going to be the same. But in 7 of Tennessee's last 8 losses, the Vols have scored 20 or fewer points. So I guess theoretically I could have said 21, but I wanted to give myself a little bit of room. I wanted to have a little bit of pad in there. The only time that didn't happen was in the 2022 season. Tennessee scored 38, I think it was, and lost 63-38 to South Carolina. Now, that game was an anomaly. I remember listening to that one on the radio. And I kind of snickered because I thought it was like, Tennessee was going to do this and that. And then remember, its quarterback got hurt. And no laughing about that. I don't root for injuries. You shouldn't root for injuries. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but injuries suck. I mean, even if it's against a team you don't particularly care for. And they had to bring in former Michigan quarterback Joe Milton, and that was not necessarily the secret sauce there. So you look at Tennessee this year in its 4 SEC road games, and it's not putting up, or in its 2 losses and its 4 road games. Yes, it put up 30 something against Vanderbilt, but it let Vandy get off to a 14-0 head start in that game. I think that keeping Tennessee down, 20, 21, 24, I think all of that is very important for the Buckeyes. Now, when I wrote this piece a couple days ago, it ran on Monday. I think I wrote it on Sunday as the washing machine goes off in the background, so don't mind that. The joys of the home office at home. I think I felt that Ohio State was going to score closer to 30. I have maybe walked back my score prediction a little bit. I haven't changed on what my margin of victory is going to be, and I'm not going to really get into all of that. I will talk about that Friday on a live show with a live edition of the Big Me Kickoff with what my prediction is, as we will have those on Buckeye Huddle either on Friday afternoon, maybe Saturday. With it being a night game, we have to have a little content on Saturday. So I think it's important for Ohio State to get to that point. Now, I watched a really good video out there from the college football nerds, and I'm generally not one to promote other people's content, but I always like to promote the nerds. I think they do a really good job, and they're modeling, and I don't want to get into the whole crux of their piece because I want them to get views too. Their model had Tennessee scoring less than 11 points in this game, and they're like, under. It's going to be the total is going to hit under what it's set at. So I don't know if I feel as strongly that Ohio State is really going to surpass 24, but I take people back to the 2006 Michigan game. Ohio State and Michigan, top teams in the country, top defenses in the country. This is going to be 10-6. It was 42-39. Granted, it wasn't 16 degrees out. I was at Ohio State earlier today, and I was talking with a couple of writers. I want to get this on record in case somebody takes it after hearing me. And nobody said they were going to take it, but here is my bet for people. Which number will be higher? The team that wins this game's point total or the temperature in degrees at kickoff? And, I think that's a very valid bet because it's supposed to get down to 15 that night. I mean, as of recording, when I see this, as we're doing this, I don't think we're going to see the overnight low at 8:00. And I'm not talking wind chill either. Real feel is probably going to be pretty close to 0. I'm not talking wind chill. I'm not talking any of that. I'm talking the air temperature. What does the mercury say on the thermometer? But regardless of all that, I think that if Ohio State breaks 24, that is a very good sign. Or we have been sold a very fraudulent bill of goods in terms of what these defenses are and everything else. Because, again, it sucks to play in the cold. Hockey, it's fantastic. Football, it's tough. I played a lot of snow football my junior and senior years of high school, like pickup games, not high school football itself, living in New Hampshire. And I'll tell you, once you start running around, once you get popped once, because, of course, we were playing tackle with no pads because we were stupid. But once you get hit a couple times, get running around, get your constitution going, the energy of an 18-year-old, you're not as, I was 17, you're not as concerned about that situation, but it's going to be a lot. So that's one on offense. Again, I'm going to do 3 on offense and 3 on defense. I'm going to skip that one because I think that one's pretty obvious. You can read it in there. I'm going to skip that one too. All right, commit no more than 1 turnover. Well, duh. Now, what happens, Kevin, if Ohio State forces 4 turnovers and commits 2 turnovers? I mean, Ohio State's +2. That's all well and good. Ohio State's turnovers, Ohio State's giveaways always seem to equal really bad things. Certainly against the team up north, that didn't help. Any issues it had against Oregon, that didn't help. I mean, yes, Ohio State's been able to withstand some of them, but generally turns into points. Ohio State has not given up a lot of points this season, ladies and gentlemen. So I probably should have looked up the number of how many points Ohio State has given up on turnovers this season. That'll be an interesting thing. If you know the number and you want to put it in the notes in the comments, that would be great. But you sit there and you look at the situation. Tennessee actually turns the ball over a little bit more than Ohio State does. Ohio State is less prone to the fumble than Tennessee. Tennessee has a couple more fumbles than Ohio State. Ohio State has a couple more interceptions than Tennessee. But I think Tennessee has 2 more turnovers on the season than Ohio State. But if Ohio State commits no more than 1 turnover, and I don't want to speak anything into existence. I'm very superstitious. I know a lot of you are. Shut up, Kevin. Don't say that. Why are you wearing blue at the Woody? All of that good stuff. If Ohio State plays a clean game, that means that Will Howard is having a good game. Will Howard has had a couple of interceptions this year, 8, I believe. And that is, that's not great. I've seen much worse numbers out there before. I've seen much worse numbers at Ohio State, even in years when they didn't throw the ball that much, pre-Urban. And if he comes out and he has a clean game, if he's making good decisions, his guys are getting open, they're able to dink and dunk, because I don't think Ohio State's is going to bomb Tennessee with a bunch of 9 routes. Ohio State's going to probably have to get the ball out pretty quick because of that pass rush. But if Will Howard has a good game, if Will Howard has a clean game, Tennessee is in big trouble. Even if Ohio State comes out and plays an A game and Tennessee comes out and plays an A game, I think Ohio State's 10 points better. Now, we've had a lot of really good Vols fans, and 1 or 2 that have been a little on the line, who I've gotten along with very well. They have been the antithesis of what, we hashtag Vols Twitter. They've been very nice. They're very complimentary of how fair we are, how objective we are. So I don't want to ruin all that, being like, well, Noon's coming out and saying that there's Ohio State's at least 10 points better. I'm saying if both teams come out and play an A game, or if both teams come out and play a B game, if they play on equal footing based on personnel, Ohio State can score quicker than Tennessee. And I know Dylan Sampson is a tremendous running back. They don't hand out SEC Offensive Player of the Year awards for the hell of it. He's earned it. It's real. He's real, and they're spectacular. 1,400 plus yards. Tremendous back. And yeah, he can house it. But generally speaking, Ohio State's passing offense is more of a big play offense than I think the run offense can be for Tennessee. Now, we're also talking about, I think Ohio State's allowed 2 plays over 30, and I think Tennessee's allowed 3. Neither of these teams really allow it to happen, but at some point, offense can trump defense. Offense knows where it's going, and the defense has got to react. So I think just in terms of how things work, if the offense is playing on the nails, they're hitting the screws, they're doing all of these axioms that you want to talk about out there, I think that favors Ohio State. Now, what happens if Ohio State plays a B game and Tennessee plays an A- game? Well, then stuff gets to be a lot closer at that point. And how does Ohio State start to drop down letter grades or half letter grades or whatever? Turning the ball over. So Ohio State has to play clean football. And I put 1 in there. I wanted to bake 1 in. I'm not Jim Knowles baking in the big plays against the defense to start his coaching tenure at Ohio State. I'm not doing that. But I think Ohio State can endure 1, because I think Ohio State scores at least in the 20s. So if you give up 7 right there, and then Tennessee comes out and earns 10 more, another touchdown, another field goal. And again, I'm not predicting the game at this moment. It is Tuesday. This is like the latest I've taken writing a prediction into the season. Pro tip, I normally write them on Sunday, and I don't change my mind. I'm very opinionated, and I'm very stubborn, so I don't change my mind that often. I've changed my number a couple of times. I'm not ready to commit to something yet. But the point is that let's just sit there and say that baked in, they get 7 off of the turnover, they earn a touchdown, and they kick a field goal. That's 17 right there. Ohio State just needs to get to 18. But honestly, if Ohio State gets to 20, 21, 24, that's a win. So I think that clean football Clean football is a key for Ohio State. And by coming out and saying commit no turnovers, while that shouldn't be unrealistic, there have just been the turnovers. There have just been the turnovers this year. And I'm not saying that you need to accept them. I'm not saying that you need to like them. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that if there is a turnover, don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. Now, if Ohio State turns one over in the end zone, or Ohio State, or worse yet, if Ohio State turns one over in the shadow of its own end zone, that is a problem. That is a problem. On one end, it's because you've given away sure points, and on the other end, you're giving them a short field. Last time Ohio State took the field at Ohio Stadium, that other team scored 10 points off of 5 yards, a 3-yard drive and a 2-yard drive. So don't do that. And then, the last one, I guess I did 5 over here. The other one I'm going to say on offense is allow 2 or fewer sacks. There is this misconception out there that Tennessee has like 179 sacks. Obviously, that is an unrealistic number. That is, we're approaching 13, 14, 15 sacks a game. Ohio State has more sacks on the year, has recorded more sacks than Tennessee. What does that mean for Saturday night? Absolutely nothing. But where Tennessee gets you are the TFLs. And, we can get into that at maybe a later show. If Ohio State is able to largely contain James Pierce Jr. and the rest of the defensive line, I like Ohio State's chances. There are a lot of similarities between Tennessee and Penn State. Now, both of the fan bases are going to come after me because Tennessee fans are like, oh, no, we're not like Penn State. And Penn State's going to be like, oh, no, we're not like Tennessee. Well, you both have freak athletes on the edge. Abdul Carter, James Pierce Jr. You both have strong defensive lines. I think I like Tennessee's defensive line a little bit better. I'm not even going to talk about the secondary because none of this has to do with the secondary. So you look at what Abdul Carter was able to do, and he was able to get around Donovan Jackson a couple of times. Jackson had not really had a ton of reps at tackle yet. I think he's probably a lot more comfortable in his position. I think that going into this, I think that there is going to be knowledge by Will Howard that he's going to have to have a Herculean effort in a lot of ways. And that's not saying that he has to play out of his mind to beat Tennessee. But, this can't be Nebraska. This can't be Nebraska. And I'm not even going to talk about the last game because that game was just putrid. I mean, if that game happened, just don't even bother to show up because it's just too cold for that BS. So if Ohio State is able to protect Will Howard largely, I think that is going to be important. Of course, you can dovetail into, but what's the run blocking going to be like? And the run blocking is going to be incredibly important too. Don't run between the tackles. Period. End of story. Full stop. Don't run between the D tackle or between the ends. You cannot get a lot done A-gapping this right off the bat. I mean, maybe you can wear them down. I've had some Tennessee fans like, we can play a light box. It doesn't matter. Our line's going to take care of it. Play a light box at your own peril. Ohio State will run against you on a light box. I'm not saying that Tennessee has to put 8 in the box every time. If Tennessee puts 8 in the box, Jeremiah Smith or Emeka Egbuka is going to be open like almost all the time. So you got to find a happy medium there. But I think that, the protection is going to be important because in 6 of the last game, 8 losses for Tennessee, opponents have been sacked 2 or fewer times. That even includes Graham Mertz when they lost to Florida in 23. And Graham Mertz was not exactly fleet of foot or great game awareness or any of that at Wisconsin. And it didn't suddenly get better at Florida either. So I think there's a lot of importance there. But you can check out my other 2 as well in that story. So let's get to the defensive side as we're at 20 minutes. I was worried I was going to have a hard time filling 15. So we will go on for a couple here on the defense, and then we'll call it a show. I'm going to do 2 more shows on Wednesday, one for Wednesday, one for Thursday. And of course, on Friday, we will have our live show again, the live edition of the Big Me Kickoff. I told you earlier in the show, ask me how you can get a discounted rate to check out Buckeye Huddle. First month, no coupon code needed. $4.99. $4.99 for your first month of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Get all the great team coverage from Tom Moore, Tony Gerdeman, yours truly, recruiting coverage from Mark Givler, X's and O's from Ross Fulton and our team of experts over with that. So all of that's there, plus the Huddle board. The friendliest Buckeye community out there. I've checked them all out, and they're all fine. But ours is great. I mean, ours is great. Everybody gets along. I mean, and message board culture dictates that should not be the case. There should be a lot of arm wrestling and other shenanigans going on in message boards, but our community is great. We're on there all the time, so you don't have to wait for our shows. You don't have to wait for our live shows to interact with us. $4.99 first month, Buckeye Huddle. Check us out. Commercial over. What must Ohio State's defense do? We're gonna check this one out. The first one is probably the most basic. Well, no, the most basic one would be hold them to fewer points than you score. Obviously, I put a number on one of them. You're going to have to check that out. I would like to have that number back at this point because, again, I'm trending lower on the score than where I was. I'm trending lower. I am not giving wagering advice, but I would take a look at the under in this game. I would take a look at the under. I know we already talked about it, but I feel strongly about it. Get after the quarterback. That is so important. In 4 road games this year, the Tennessee quarterback has been sacked 12 times. 9 of those were in the 2 losses to Georgia and Arkansas. Obviously, Georgia is a freaking machine on its defensive line. That should not come as a surprise. But Arkansas, Sam Pittman was a hot name for a hot minute out there. I really like Sam Pittman. I think that he's a throwback. I want to see him have success. I think he is a great fit at Arkansas, but Arkansas isn't all that good this year. Last year, I mean, it's been a little bit of a downward trend. So for the line not to hold up and sack Nico 9 times means something. Nico is somebody who's going to run around and try and extend plays, whether it's with his arm or his legs. There should be a lot of opportunity there if the Buckeyes give the rushers free reign to do that. Now, there's something else to be said about contain. Nico can run around enough. He is not going to go out there. He's not JT Barrett. He's not going to run for 1,000 yards. He's not Braxton Miller. He's not going to do some of those things, but he can run. He can run for certain. So you want to make sure you don't lose contain in doing so and come within a millimeter of missing the sack, but giving up a 28-yard run. Or maybe even more maddening, giving up a 13-yard run on 3rd and 10 and having them extend the drive, move the chains, and take time off the clock. So you got to find all of that. But with that being said, I think that there is the opportunity to get to Nico. I think there is the opportunity to speed him up. Nico has not really gotten on the same page with his receivers. He has, and we're going to talk about one of the receivers in this next section, but he has a couple of favorite targets. One has four touchdown receptions. The other has 6. That's the lion's share. Nobody else has more than 2. So that's good news because you know who he's going to, but it's bad news because he does have the ability to spread the ball around. But how much of that happened against NC State? How much of that happened against UTEP? How much of that happened against Chattanooga? I don't have those numbers in front of me, but they really ran stuff up in their non-conference, plain and simple. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do. You play to score points. You play to play football. You play to do all these things. You don't want us to score. Stop us. I don't have a problem with any of that. I think that you can do that, and it's still respectful. It's still respectful because you're honoring the game. You're honoring the spirit of the game by playing 4 quarters of football. It's different than flag planting and all this other stuff, things I don't necessarily want to get into. In a lot of ways, I think I would be more disrespected if a team just started taking a knee with 3 minutes to go in the game. Or you knew that they were completely just playing it out, student body left, student body right. Oh, well, we really were scarred because you put up 60 points. This is not going to be a game with anybody scoring 60. But, oh, you really scarred us by doing that. Well, then maybe this is not the sport for you. Sport? I don't know. I don't know. But it's one of those things. But I think that the next step is you got to keep Dante Thornton Jr. in check. And that is their main receiver, 6'5, 215, 23.4% of all Tennessee receiving yards are on his hands. Only wide receiver on the roster with more than 2 touchdowns. The other guy is the tight end with 4. But here's something. Of his 6 touchdowns, 4 of them were against Tennessee teams. A pair against Chattanooga and a pair against Vandy. So fortunately, unless something has happened, unless Kentucky's gone bye-bye, Ohio State and Tennessee don't share a border. Ohio State has not suddenly become part of Tennessee. Does it really mean anything in the big picture? No. I mean, you're going to score where you're going to score, and we could sit there and look at trends until the end of time, and that doesn't mean anything. But it's something to be said there. But Dante Thornton is a big physical receiver. Davison Igbinosun going up against him, who is the most physical of all of Ohio State's DBs. In that type of situation, I could see IGB getting hit with a couple PIs if he's not careful. You could be like, I was just trying to keep warm. I was just trying to get close to him to keep warm. The physicality there is going to be real because it's not like you're going to be able to put a linebacker on him. Oh, well, we'd like to match size. Well, you're not going to be able to match speed and catch radius and everything else. So Ohio State has to keep Thornton Jr. in check. So that's 2. Let me pick the last one that I want to do here. I will say this one, and you're going to say, well, that's not really that great, but hear me out. Hold Dylan Sampson to 140 yards on the ground. That's a lot of yardage. Ohio State is not giving up 140 often, like to teams, let alone to one player. We can sit there and we can look at what's happening. Sampson was held, to fewer than 140 yards in 7 games this season. And, in 3 of the games that, in 3 games, he scored 10 touchdowns with Chattanooga, Kent State, and Florida. So, yardage and points don't necessarily mean the same thing. You can sit there and have 31 yards and 4 scores. So don't get too hung up on the 140. But I think that if Ohio State is really able to control the run, I don't think you're going to be able to keep Sampson to 48 yards. Ohio State, back during the Urban era, was able to keep like Wisconsin's big backs, the Monty Balls of the world and guys like that to, 45, 52 yards or whatnot. I don't know if Ohio State's going to be able to keep Sampson to that type of a low number. And I also felt that if I came in and I said 99 yards, I felt like I was setting everybody up for failure at that point. Because if Ohio State's able to really affect the passing game, and Nico is a redshirt freshman and running around and overthrowing and underthrowing and not exactly setting his feet, he is a quarterback that is so dictated by his mechanics. You see people who sometimes will make a good throw flat-footed, or going kind of the wrong way and having to go cross body and some things like that. From what I've seen of Nico so far, he has to have everything pointed in the right direction. He is not able to do some of those no, yes throws yet. That's just not where he is in his development. I think that Tennessee's quarterback is going to end up being very good in his career. Dare I say, I think he will end up at New York for a Heisman ceremony. Not going to go so far to say he should win it. You don't know who he's going to go against each year, what's going to be out there. But I think that his upward trajectory is fantastic. There were a lot of schools out there that wanted to land this kid. Tennessee was the fortunate school that landed him, and now they're kind of going through a growing process. You don't see a lot of, the Dylan Raiola situations of where they come out and start as a true freshman. Those don't happen a lot. And we saw Dylan Raiola give a lot of stuff back as the year went on. oh my God, this kid's crazy. He's doing all this. And then suddenly he hit the freshman wall and it kind of went, it started to go back a little bit. So back to Sampson. He's averaging 5.8 yards per carry, both at home and on the road. So there isn't a huge difference there. But you look at his 4 road games, and he was averaging 127.8 on per game on about 22 and a half carries, 5.68 yards per carry. The numbers got run up a little against Vanderbilt. He ran for $178, which means in the other 3 games he was only running for 110 yards, well under the 140. So I did think about saying 115, but again, I wanted to allow myself a little space. Plus, Sampson was not necessarily finding the end zone at the end of the season. He only had 3 touchdowns over the span of 4 games. He went like 0, 1, 1, 1 is how that happened. So, I mean, he scored in 3 of the 4 games, but he didn't get in there more than once. Now, that comes down to play calling. That comes down to a lot of things. I don't necessarily think it's like Sampson just like completely ran out of gas and just couldn't do it. But they certainly could have called his number more against Vanderbilt in that game, especially as they came back. And he didn't necessarily have that type of big game. Yeah, he ran for $178, but he couldn't get in the end zone. I mean, Tennessee did score in the 30s, but Tennessee never really lit anybody on fire in the SEC, even against some of the bad teams. They got into the 30s in a couple of games, but they didn't blow up. They didn't have that. And I mean, Ohio State hung 45 on Purdue. What have you done for me lately? I could sit there and I could pull up what Ohio State's numbers were. And I think Ohio State, in some ways, the offense gave a lot back and it was kind of pedestrian. I mean, 38 against Michigan State, 35 against Iowa, 31 against Oregon. And, then we kind of get into some lower numbers, 21 against Nebraska, 20 against Penn State. But then they got back into the 30s against Northwestern and Indiana. Obviously, I said 45 against Purdue and then 10 in the last game, the game that we shall not mention. Ohio State scored more points. That's to be said. Ohio State, and this is what I'll end on. Ohio State, in its 9 conference games, averaged 29.9 points a game. Tennessee averaged 25.0 in its 8 conference games. Ohio State gave up 12.3 points per game in 9 conference games. Tennessee gave up 19.3. So Ohio State was about 5 points better on offense and about 7 full points better on defense. Now, does that mean that I should sit there and say, well, Ohio State's going to win the game by 12? No, but maybe I should consider it. And I think there's going to be a lot of factors in play there. But Ohio State's offense certainly was able to accomplish more. And people will sit there and say, well, Tennessee played in the SEC. Well, the SEC wasn't great this year. I mean, there are some very good teams, but it wasn't 7 teams deep. It wasn't 8 teams deep. There were adding 2 teams with Texas and Oklahoma diluted the pool a little bit, and I just think that some teams that generally are going to be more name recognizable just weren't great, and we'll run through that. At Oklahoma had an abysmal year. At Arkansas, they lost that game. Versus Florida, that game went to overtime. They beat Alabama, and the same Alabama team that's playing in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Michigan. The same Alabama team that got left out of the playoff, the same Alabama team that got smacked by Oklahoma. This ain't your daddy's Alabama team. This even ain't your big brother's Alabama team. This is a very different Alabama team. They beat Kentucky by 10. They beat Mississippi State by 19. Mississippi State was terrible. They lost by 14 to Georgia. And then they beat Vandy by 13. And I said that they spotted them a 14-0 lead. So, I understand about maybe coming out and looking past somebody or whatever, but it wasn't a case of Tennessee looking past anybody for the SEC championship game. They weren't getting in the SEC championship game. So they just came out and saw a little nerdy brother, Vanderbilt, out there in Nashville. They overlooked them at first, and then they had to kind of bring it back around. So those are my thoughts. But again, I will put these show notes. I'll put these stories, links to them in the show notes. They are free. They are free stories. So check us out. Tomorrow, I will have Tale of the Tape coming out on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I have a By the Numbers feature coming out. And then on Friday, I will have my 3 shots. What's 3 shots? Well, we'll talk about it on a future show. It is my bold predictions piece because Tom and Tony won't let me play with them. So all of that coming up. Be sure to check out all of our content at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up if you haven't, $4.99 first month. Until then, my 15-minute show's turned into 35. I want to sit there and turn on the Ohio State basketball game. So I'm going to let you go. Have a great night and talk to you very soon.